On earth right now, we have relationships with people. Everyone understand that? And sometimes those relationships are tighter or fonder. You know, I love all members of my family, but I don't choose my family, I choose my friends. So there's different types of love. Can everyone understand what I mean by that? So when people are really close to me, be that friends or family, I feel there's an intuition, there's an instinct that links me to them. And actually before that person needs to call me to tell me they're in trouble, I often think about them or I feel something about them. Everyone understand that happens on earth right now. So I call that effect the walkie-talkie effect. And it's almost as if me and my friend or my loved one, we're holding up two walkie-talkies. And that's what that relationship, that's what nourishes that relationship. When they pass over, sometimes it takes them a while to remember how to use the walkie-talkie. If we continue to transmit in the same way, that same relationship we had, it's just a matter of them remembering how to reply. Equally, after a period of time, sometimes we switch off the walkie-talkie and we don't communicate in the same way. And as a spirit around us, what I get is this constant thread of that unconditional love. It's still very strong and very exists. And sometimes they switch on their walkie-talkie straight away. Sometimes it takes them a while. But what I would encourage you all to do is to think about yourself as that radio, as that antenna, switch that on. And if it's okay, I'm now going to work with you, and I'm going to do some mediumship for about another 5 minutes. Everyone happy with that? Okay, I've got a woman with me. She's claiming to be family. Okay, she's calling out mother. I feel like I'm over here, and I know that the lady sat there with a black jacket, and I know that someone spoke to you earlier on. But I'm calling you mother. I feel this is a label that you have. You're a mother right now, and there's this family either side of you. Okay, I feel like I've got someone, okay, they're giving me this impression that they are family, okay? And although they're calling you mother, I feel like I've got a motherly vibe with her. It's almost like she's maternal. She's talking about being grandmother and mother and wrapping her arms around you all. Would you understand that as a generation thing between you and through? Okay, so as she communicates with me, okay, she shows the letter C on her chest. C is often quite symbolic for me with a cancer or a cancerous type condition. But I feel like the C is more significant for her. Would you understand the letter C? Okay, let me ask you, would you understand that cancerous type condition? As I often see that as a symbol. I feel like I've got problems inside my body. It still feels like there wasn't, she's saying there wasn't one thing that killed me. It was like I had a contribution or a combination of things. Would you understand that? And she feels like people writing her death certificate, it wasn't straightforward. It was almost like there was a mini investigation after I died just to see all the different things that led to that. Would you understand? Okay, so she's talking about that, she's giving that confirmation because she feels that it was almost like bingo. Okay, so she's giving me this sensation, it's like she's crossing out numbers on the bingo card. But she said, in the end, I had to call bingo because they kept giving me all these different conditions to battle with. It was like I was filling up my card. Would you understand that? She's talking about the fact that I had some success maintaining some sort of a type of illness. I had like an ongoing illness. And it feels like towards the end, everything just contributed towards a lower immune system. And I feel that I was just consumed and overwhelmed. Do you understand that time for her passing? Okay, so she wants to work with you. Can I ask her name, please? Yeah. Hello, Helen. Helen is my mother-in-law's name as well. And as she was talking about me, she was talking about in-laws because she was showing me my mother-in-law. And she was talking about, okay, it's like I'm expanding the family at the moment. It's like we've got more in-laws becoming family. Would you understand that? I want to surround you in this ring, and it's symbolic as a ring, it's a circle of trust. But she's also showing me it's like there's wedding rings. It's like I've got commitment rings happening, and I've got the family expanding. Do you understand that? Okay, so she's talking about a fantastic time for celebration. And she's making reference, okay, earlier on I spoke about not choosing your family and you're choosing your friends. She's saying that sometimes by choosing new family through marriage, it's a great thing for the family. She's talking about really enhancing the family. You understand that at the moment? And she's talking about that in great pride. Okay, so I know you're sat between two people that you said were family, but she's also saying that you're propping each other up. At the moment, I feel symbolically you've got two solid pillars either side of you, and it feels like they're, okay, it's almost like I've got your two great strong pillars either side of you that are giving me physical and emotional strength. Would you understand that? Okay, because she's giving me like the thumbs up. She's saying fantastic because you are this pillar of strength. But she's talking about the fact that you're all linked at a foundation level and you're all there independently for each other. Okay, so you two would understand that as well? Because she's talking about the fact that although you're physically a pillar of strength, this is Mother? Yeah. Although you're a pillar of strength for her, actually, she gives you the strength and the foundations to do what you do. It's like a continuation. You understand that? And she's talking about the fact that you planted the seeds, you've laid the foundations, and it's a super foundation, and super structures will grow. Okay? So she's enormously proud of that, and she wants to give you that recognition, because what she's telling me is that she may have gave her opinion on other aspects of parenting and politics and everything else in your life, and she might not always have agreed and said you've done a fantastic job. Would you understand that? So what she's saying is, actually you did. I just like to always say that there was my way, which I often thought was the right way. But actually you've done a fantastic job. So you understand this I really want to recognise you've done a fantastic job, and the fact I didn't say that enough. Okay, so absolutely loves you, really, really proud of you. Continue to be there for each other, and as the family expands, she just stands back and takes lovely pictures and memories. She says all really, really good stuff. You've understood who you communicated to us, and that was your message. Thank you, folks.
Hi guys, it's Brigitte here, and I think this is our fourth or fifth episode of Life After Death.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here with Spiritualist medium Ashley Robinson.
Hello, Brigitte. Hello, friends.
Now, well, let's dive into the questions. So somebody asked me a question today. When someone dies, how long does it take for their spirit to cross over?
I think that being a believer, there is only one afterlife.
Yeah.
I think it's instantaneous. But depending on the knowledge that you cross into that afterlife, depending on the knowledge, how much you understand about what that afterlife is, I think depends on what it means for you when you cross over. Yeah. So if you were a practicing spiritualist that believed in a life after death and the ability to communicate from that life after death, then it's instantaneous. You have that ability. But actually, if you had an open mind and when you died you realised it was possible and you wanted to, again, it can be instantaneous. There might be lots of things that you weren't happy with your life. Mm-hmm. There might be things that you don't want to say. And to add some context to that, the evidence I've had, a member of my wife's family, so an in-law, he never really had anything of a faith or belief in anything, be that a supreme being or a great architect or of a heaven or a concept of an afterlife. But within minutes of him leaving his physical body on earth, he was giving me proof of that life after death. And he was doing that instantly. And I think he did that because he could, because it was enabled. Equally, I knew a lady who was very, very close to me, almost a sort of grandmother figure through the church, that had been a spiritualist, 80 years of her life. And what she always said is that when she died, she was finally going to have that peace she was looking for, and she wouldn't be back. And today, we've never had any messages for her. So I think that like an onion, the afterlife probably has lots of layers, lots of dimensions either, or lots of different frequencies. But being there only one afterlife, the ability to communicate from there is instant.
I've had another question yesterday, and it's, often enough people ask spirit for help, and especially when they're going through challenging times, and then they say, but they're not listening. Why is my life still difficult? Why are they not helping me? Yeah,
I think it's a frequently asked question, not just in modern time, but throughout history. And there are two, I would think, fairly famous things that I would like to introduce that explain that context of people frequently asking that question. The first thing is I want to take you back to a religious education lesson at school when I was about 11 years old. And the subject of this lesson was, where was God for the Jews in concentration camps? Right. And I remember really struggling with that concept and coming back and having that conversation with my father as a spiritualist. We haven't yet finished this assignment, Dad, but where was God? You had all these, religious practicing Jews that believe very much in God. Where was he in the concentration camps? And actually, conversation with my dad, and as the assignment and the project went on, I realised that God was with them to enable them to get through what they were going through. And in one way, shape or another, it was their belief and their faith in something greater than themselves that enabled them to get through. And it reminded me of the Footprints poem, which is fairly well known. In fact, yes. we've sold the poem in the church. But the concept of when I was walking in the sand and I was having my most difficult times, and I see that there is only one set of footprints. Where was you, God or great architect? And of course, the answer being that was when I carried you.
Yes.
That is why you only see one set of footprints in the sand. And I think that God, energy, guidance, the divine, whatever label we want to give it, we don't know what's there or not there until we don't recognize what it is. But if we're saying that we're trusting only our instinct and only our conscious decision-making process, then we might be able to claim that we've done something without any real guidance or inspiration. Otherwise, I think that it's at times that we find that inspiration, or we have that instinct to make a decision, to zig or to zag, to turn left or to turn right at that crossroads. That's the time we receive the guidance. It might not be obviously signposted in brilliant white lights, but that is the time we get that guidance.
But now you're talking about zig and zag, you turn left or right. That's a sliding doors effect, okay? Because you can make a left, or you can make a right, but these are two completely different choices, and the outcomes are different.
Yeah, and of course, understand, and I use the word God because God feels familiar to me to describe that energy, but knowing that my relationship with God, with that energy, with that supreme being, isn't going to be the same way I have a relationship with friends on earth right now. The conversation level is not going to take the same place. In the same way that when I have communicators from heaven or from the spirit world, that they aren't able to have those simple conversations with me. It's about trusting all of our senses and asking those questions and then waiting for what feels right. And if we can't feel what feels right, we might feel what feels wrong or doesn't feel that it's attracting us. Closing our eyes and using our mind's eye to try and go towards the light. Yeah. Even when I close my eyes and if I were asked, what do I see? And if I say I see nothing, actually I need to break it down, because what is it that I perceive as nothing? Is nothing in itself a colour? Is the inside of my eyelids, the darkness or the greys or the colours behind that, is it in itself guidance? And I think it's about interpreting all those things and all the different senses we're able to comprehend now, as well as the senses we don't yet comprehend.
You know, I read somewhere that you don't need to believe in God or life after death to go to the spiritual realm. All you have to do really is die.
Yeah. And I think that having that belief that there is only one afterlife, there's the life we have on earth right now, and then there is the life after that, the afterlife. Now, I call that place heaven. And I think for a lot of people, heaven is exactly what you want it to be. Be that paradise, be that an equivalent luxurious version of the life you lived on earth. Yeah. And then again, it goes back to really your knowledge and understanding. You know, was I just a user of Wi-Fi, or was I the programmer of Wi-Fi? The more detail I can comprehend, the more I can understand, the quicker I might be able to complete that journey. Because I think that afterlife, for me, if I was looking at it as a bird's eye view, it is probably leveled in some way. But rather than it be individual castles within castles, I think it's more like a multi-story car park. There are levels where you can see the levels above you, to the side of you, the levels below. You can help people up. There are ramps. But this car park also has a version of the Snakes and Ladders board game overlaid over the top. Yeah. So you can keep progressing along, and you can find a ladder that suddenly takes you up a lot quicker. Or you can find a snake and shoot right back down.
There was somewhere that I read 2 days ago, I think, about Saddam Hussein. And he came forward to a psychic medium, and he was saying that he's in a different part of heaven, because there's no heaven or hell. It's all heaven. It's all heaven. And he has to learn compassion, and he has to apologize to all these souls that crossed over because of him.
And you know, I can believe that. I can believe that. For someone who ultimately was the very definition of evil, you know, Hitler and Saddam Hussein and people like that, there's an awful lot of wrongdoing. And not only would they have inherited some karmatic debt that they take with them, but they wouldn't be allowed immediate contact with people that had just crossed over. Because again, if your knowledge of the afterlife is limited to I'm now in a life after death, actually I'm still going to behave and respond like a human. And if I bump into Mr. or Mrs. Evil with that same consciousness, then I'm arguably not going to be a very spiritual person towards them. I'm going to see that evil. So no doubt there is lots of lessons and education and periods of things that they have to go to. And it may be that depending on how much of that karmatic debt you've inherited and taken with you, you'll never be able to progress to a certain point within that afterlife. You might only ever get to the basement level of the car park. You're going to have to go back and relive some lives, or do a lot of helping of people that are in that transition before you're allowed anywhere near the ramp, let alone the ladder to the next level. And I don't really have the capacity or the intelligence to fully comprehend this afterlife, this car park. But I do know there'll be people like Master Yoda of the Jedi Force somewhere levitating at the top, and your Saddam Husseins of this world probably quite low down on that. And I only understand that in the same way that I understand frequencies on Earth right now, radio frequencies and low levels and high levels.
Yep.
I think that our human concepts of the energy in things like radio helps us to understand a little bit of the universe and the afterlife.
And you know, from your observation, what is it that holds people back from actually living their lives? Now, you mentioned Yoda. So I'm talking about fear, but fear is the path to the dark side, as Yoda said.
Yeah.
But it is, a lot of times it's fear. That's what holds people back.
Yeah, I can believe that. And I read a brilliant article recently about what started off as dry January, where people were giving up alcohol for a month of January. And then there was some university students that had come across the concept of a try January, where they were using January to try all the things they were afraid about the year before. So it was a kind of like a new concept of New Year's resolutions. And although the article was quite interesting, and I recommend anyone to Google it and read it, it got me thinking about that very thought. You know, what is it that holds us back from doing the things we do? Because although I'm very happy in my life right now, I think that if I were to look at it strategically, am I doing all the things that I was probably on earth to do? Maybe. Am I pursuing happiness? Well, I'm very happy. I've been lucky to fall in love, to meet a fantastic woman, to have children. But is that why I'm here? Is that the meaning of life for me? Perhaps it is. Perhaps there are still things holding me back. Is my job in the civil service exactly where I'm meant to be? Is it the biggest impact that I have on Mother Earth and the universe? Maybe. Maybe I'm doing some good there that does ripple through. But I think that being able to take off some of those anchors, some of those shackles and chains, and really do the things that make you happy, I think that is some way there. Because I do believe that things like unconditional love, and you can often find unconditional love or give it out in that pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
Those are quite important missions. And you find that when people are healthy and happy and pursuing happiness and doing things that make them happy, often or not, they are doing things which are having a big impact on them and the people around them.
That's right. But when we cross over, it's not about the power we had on earth. It's not about the money. It's not about the prestige. It has nothing to do with that. It doesn't matter if you were successful here. Or what it's about is about being compassionate, you know, developing your spiritual awareness in whatever capacity that may be. And you can either love unconditionally, or you can be judgmental and bitter. But it's, yeah,
and that's probably not the path of least resistance. And if you were given the opportunity to come to Earth as a human being the first time, it's probably unlikely that you would knowingly choose a life like that. I think you would need to be somewhat educated and wise, because I think that our very instinct of humans sometimes is to choose the path of least resistance, particularly if that path leads us to happiness. And actually, if you happen to be born into circumstances of wealth, and you had everything you want, then quite selfishly, you are still very happy and you are pursuing happiness. Yes. But all about all the people around you, that the impact you have on them. So it may be that while you might instinctively choose a life which is quite easy, because it's easy and happy or healthy, it might take you a bit of wisdom, which you might not necessarily have within your life in Earth, in human one, to be able to correct. And that's why I believe that there are opportunities to come back and live other lives.
Yes.
You might need several lives to help you make the right decisions before you actually come back on attempt number 4 or 5 or even 405 to actually start to live a different life, or to pick a life which is actually much more difficult and challenging than it probably ever had to be. But those are the lessons that you're now choosing to learn.
So is there evidence of past lives?
I've had evidence of past life. I mean, I myself have been regressed, and I've been able to take my sort of self-guided meditation, and I've been able to come up with pockets of lives that weren't mine, some of which had been checked out. Now, it might be that my subconscious was holding on to an actual character which lived in history. Other stuff has been more difficult to prove. But you talk to other people that have gone through similar regressions, and you see that some of the evidence that they've come up It believes and means something to them. And I think that that in itself is okay, because anyone can claim or make an allegation to have been someone in history. And it could be someone very famous, like, oh, I was King Henry VIII, and I can give you all this evidence of my life because that was published. Or I can tell you about, I was the bloke that cleaned King Henry VIII's toilet, and that was the life I lived. And perhaps the evidence I'm going to give you, you'll never be able to prove because that person's life wasn't documented. And if it means something to you, perhaps that's the important thing, you know. Particularly if it means you don't repeat some of the lessons of King Henry VIII. You don't have some of the flares and personalities.
Why do our loved ones in spirit want to contact us?
I think the first thing is that they want to let us know that they're okay. Mm-hmm. And that is still very much, I believe, the human in them that understands that fear, that guilt, that pain of physical loss. And I think that instinctively they want to let us know that they are okay, because they want to ease that suffering, or they want to ease that pain. I think the second reason that people may communicate is they themselves are still nosy, instinctively so. You know, my grandmother, who only died quite recently, just before Christmas, she was a fantastic woman, and she was also very nosy from a point of she wanted to know what was going on in the family and who was doing what and where they were doing it and what was going on. Now, I don't believe that human part of my nan had left with her in her physical body. And I'm absolutely certain, and I've had evidence to suggest that this is the case, that she's come back in and checked in on things. She never got to see my son's refurbished bedroom with his dinosaur wallpaper because she could never climb the stairs. Right. And I think that was one of the first things that she went to have a look at.
How do you know?
Because I've had evidence of people that don't even know my son had dinosaurs on his wall. As a medium say, your nan's just been to see your son's room and she's saying that the dinosaurs look good on the wall. And for me, that was evidence of my nan, something which isn't, you know, wow, that's an incredible message to have from the afterlife. It's a meaningful message. Yeah. My nan is A, letting me know she's okay. Mm-hmm. B, she's letting me know that she's still an aspect of my nan. She's still interested in our lives.
Yeah.
The other thing I think that people communicate is that assuming that they found themselves in an afterlife and it is paradise as they would have described it, it's the luxury they were looking for. Mm-hmm. I believe at some point they're going to start to continue their education. We are, by instinct, as humans, inquisitive about the surroundings. And our knowledge is almost limited to our ambition. How much do we want to read? How much do we want to research? And how much studying we want to do? But even to a certain extent, you know, my nan, who lived to just over 80, would continue to watch documentaries and continue to educate herself. And that was based on the library of Virgin TV. Once she gets to heaven, yeah, and she suddenly has access to all these other libraries, I think that people from heaven, people, our loved ones that get to that realm, to that afterlife, think, oh, this is really interesting. I want to pass on some of this information so that people don't have to die to find out about it. And I think there's this sense of it's okay for them to plant seeds. It's okay for them to strategically, bird's eye view, look at our lives or look at our impact on the lives around you and say, we would quite like to give you a bit of a steer on that. Or if you're asking the right questions, we'd like to give you a bit of a steer on this too.
Mm-hmm. But that is the same when people go through challenges. My earlier question, they will plant the seed, but you have to, that's the thing, you know, become more aware.
Yeah, absolutely. It's trying to recognize things that you wouldn't necessarily have been able to label before, mm-hmm, and pick up from that direction. Yeah. And it's those quiet moments when you maybe feel that you are most alone. It's asking, why did I then make the decision I did? Or why did I feel that was the right way to do that? The very simple word guide, and we'll often say my guide, my spirit guide. What does the word guide mean in English? You know, yep. I could read it from instructions, or I could feel that I was doing something. So when I decide to do that, or that's the right thing or the wrong thing, all of that is about my morals, my instincts, my intuition, perhaps my education, and perhaps there's a little bit of a steer there. Yeah. Some seeds that have been planted.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.